Greetings, Wilkinson here. I am back from vacation. I was on the East Coast for 2 weeks, and you probably noticed that I did some reruns for some good ones that didn't get much exposure when my podcast was new. But anyway, we're doing a fresh one, and I'm here in the evening. I got back a couple hours ago, and I'm sitting across from Byron Scott Jones. We were Facebook friends, and he's visiting from Florida. And he's leaving tomorrow, so tonight's we got to do it. So that's what we're doing. So say hi to my peeps.
Hey there, everyone. Thank you very much for having me this evening. I appreciate it.
Good to have you.
Thanks.
You're a nice guy. I'm glad we finally met. I don't know where we want to dig in. Let's see. You said you're gay.
Yes.
Why don't we start with that? Tell me about your story.
Okay, so my coming out story. I wish it was all easy and fun, but so here's my coming out story. I was 18 years old. I was a freshman at the University of Miami. The very first week of school, the fraternities threw a bunch of parties to sort of introduce students to campus. It was a Saturday night. I remember getting dressed. I remember going to the fraternity row to attend the parties. And I don't remember anything else that happened that night until about 4 o'clock in the morning. I woke up in a wooded area on campus alone. At first, I was very disoriented, and I thought maybe I'd actually been hit by a car or something because I could hear some cars driving by in the distance.
Right.
It was pitch black. I really couldn't see anything. As I adjusted to the light, I realized that I was laying face down in the mud, and eventually realized I wasn't wearing very much clothes. I was wearing a shirt and a sock, and that was about it. And at first, I was like thinking, fraternity prank or something like that. I truly had no idea. I found my clothes laying around. I gathered them up. And, it was obviously far too late to get to any of the parties, and I was a mess at that point. And made it back to my dorm room. And by that point, I had my head had cleared enough that I could think straight and sort of take a look at my body and what had happened, and pretty much put together that I had been drugged and raped that night.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this was 1988. And of course, HIV was a big thing then. It was before PrEP or anything else like that. So I waited 6 months, to go get, tested for HIV because, back then it took 6 months for you to get a confirmatory test. Went to my family doctor. Told them, that something had happened and that I needed an HIV test. Doctor immediately ran out of the room. About half an hour later, a nurse in a hazmat outfit walks in.
No way.
Yeah. Her hands are shaking so bad that she couldn't actually draw the blood. She walked me through the process of drawing my own blood. And then about 2 weeks later, I come home and my mom is reading a letter, and I remember exactly what the letter says. It says, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Jones, your son, Byron Jones, who is an admitted homosexual, has been tested for AIDS. As we do not treat AIDS patients at our practice, your family is no longer welcome here. Sincerely," and the doctor signed his name. So that's how my parents found out.
Wait, were you positive then?
No. The funny thing, the test results were included. It was my first time getting tested, so I didn't even know what negative meant. I thought maybe negative meant something bad. Who knew? So I ended up talking to a friend of mine who was a doctor who told me that I was, in fact, not infected. And a couple of days later, my father calls me. I go over to his house. He's got a brand new truck, like the top of the line Ford with everything you can imagine. And he calls me into the house and he says, "I just don't have the money to help you with college anymore." And so that's how the parents found out. Kind of where my life had a big turning point, in some ways for the better, some ways for the worse, who knows. But that's how I was sort of outed. I was outed by my family doctor.
So did you know you were gay before then?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I grew up next to an Air Force base. I knew plenty of guys in the military who were, closeted
Right.
in the gay guys in the military. And I had lost my virginity when I was 15. And the irony is whoever raped me if they had just asked nicely, I probably would have said yes. It was completely unnecessary to do what they did. But who knows why people do such things as that.
Well, it raises a question. So the HIPAA stuff, you were 18, right?
I was 18.
Was that legal for them to do that?
This was actually, it happened before the HIPAA laws existed.
Okay.
Whether or not it was legal, I don't know. But he just kind of did it anyway. And at that point, it was sort of the cat was out of the bag. To be fair, my mother knew that I was gay, so to her, the more shocking thing was the test results. And to be clear, I did not tell my parents or anyone for about 27 years that I had been raped. My parents knew that I had gotten tested, but they didn't know anything more about it. So that's how I came out. And in some ways, it was a good thing. From there, I went on and joined an organization in South Florida called the Gay and Lesbian Youth Group. And they provided a lot of emotional and counseling support to gay and lesbian teenagers. I met my husband there, and I eventually became the director of the organization. I was actually the first CEO of a nonprofit tax-exempt organization in the entire country to receive 501c3 IRS recognition for that organization back in, it was 1990 or 91 or so, about that time frame that we applied for tax exemption. And so, in some ways it was a very positive thing. It kind of changed the direction of my life, but not.
And how about the frat guys? They got away with it?
They did. I mean, and to be fair, I don't know that it was a fraternity guy. I have no clue who did it. Never had an idea. If anything, that kind of made things difficult my freshman year. Every time some guy would come up and talk to me at college, in the back of my head, I would be thinking, is this the guy that did it? Is he just trying to play games with me by coming up and talking to me or something like that?
Right.
And the interesting thing about it is you don't ever fully recover from that. You learn to heal, you learn to move on. But to be quite honest, even now, there are certain things, certainly in the gay community, there's something called chemsex, where people have sex while using drugs. For me, it makes me deeply uncomfortable, just because of my experience.
Right.
For some guys, sex and drugs and rock and roll, it's all good. For me, I process it differently. So for me, it's a little uncomfortable. But you know what? Sometimes you learn what you can survive and get a little bit stronger every time you have to survive something. That was kind of my trial by fire into adulthood, literally just weeks into becoming an adult to have to go through that.
Where do we go from there? Wow.
I know, right? Well, I met my husband at the Gay and Lesbian Youth Group. It was kind of a funny story. So there was this one guy at the youth group that had a real crush on me. He was a nice guy, but I wasn't really attracted to him. But apparently behind my back, he was telling everybody at this group that we were attending, and mind you, we're talking guys in their like 14 to 26 age range, so young guys. He was telling everybody that he and I were dating and telling everyone what a great sex life we had and all this stuff. And of course, I was clueless. I had no idea that he was telling people these things. Well, there was one night, all of us went out a restaurant, and I meet a guy at the restaurant that I hit it off with and ended up hooking up. And of course, this guy who's been telling everyone that we're dating now has to explain to everyone why his supposed boyfriend just went off with another guy.
Right.
And he just digs himself in deeper. He goes and tells everyone how heartbroken he is that I just cheated on him and all this stuff.
Oh my God.
So that the next week I get to the youth group meeting, and all of the people that were huge friends with me just start giving me this horrible evil eye. And finally I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, how could you do that to, so-and-so? How could you do that to your boyfriend? And I'm like, wait, what? He's not my boyfriend. I'm like, and we have sort of a come to Jesus moment about this elaborate story that he's been telling people. And I mean, I didn't want to hurt the guy's feelings, but I'd tell people, I'm like, we're not dating. We've never had sex or anything else like that, and so forth. Now, the funny thing is, my husband was one of the guys at this group, hearing all of this drama going on, and he had been attracted to me, but because he had heard that I was in this super serious relationship with this other guy, he had never made a move. Well, a couple of days after that meeting where everything sort of the truth came out, my soon-to-be husband reached out to me, asked me to go out to dinner with him, and that's kind of where everything just sort of kicked off. So, it's interesting how things twist and turn. And he was the first man I ever went on a real date with, my husband, and together for about 33 years, although we're about to get an amicable divorce in a couple weeks.
That went on a long time.
It did. In fairness to myself, he was the very first person I dated. We had a couple good years at the beginning, and things kind of just went to a situation where I wasn't happy with the relationship, but it wasn't so horrible that I knew that I had to leave, and I kind of just did my best with the relationship. So yeah, my parents had gotten divorced when I was 5, and dealing with all the tumultuousness of step parents and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to my marriage, I kind of just tried to do my best to keep it going. But I did reach a point where I was just unhappy and felt that the unhappiness in the marriage was contributing to my depression. And I think for me, that was something that led me to say, okay, I need to really take a look at whether I want to stay in this marriage and just accept being unhappy for the rest of my life, or do I want to go ahead and end the marriage and see if I can find happiness again.
Right. What year was that?
That happened in sort of the big decision that I made internally myself was 2015, and then I had to work up the courage to tell my husband around 2017. And then he needed surgery, and his mother died, and then COVID happened, and then I had an accident, and then COVID happened. So there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened over the last couple of years. And finally, in this last March, he had to have hip replacement. And so I went up and spent a month living with him just to look after him. And then after that was done, I let him know that I was going to go ahead and file all the paperwork. And so now at this point, we have a final hearing scheduled June 30th to go ahead and, get all the paperwork signed and put it to bed, so to speak.
I always chat with the person I'm interviewing a little bit beforehand. And so you had a 2015 moment. And you described that a certain way. Go back there and do that again.
Yeah, definitely. So 2015 was kind of a big year for me. Going back to my childhood, I've had episodes of clinical depression. It seemed like every 7 years or so. 2015 just happened to be when I had one of them. And one of the things that I did, sort of a mental exercise to deal with my depression, was I pulled out a sheet of paper and a pen, and I started writing down a list of everything that I felt in my life that was contributing to my depression. And there were a couple things that were kind of major. First of all was the marriage. I felt that it had run its course, and I needed to kind of work up the courage to end that. In 2014, the year prior, I had been diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, and I was 100 pounds overweight. And I felt that those two things, the diabetes and being overweight, were two big things contributing to my depression. I also felt that being someone who was kind of deeply introverted was also contributing to that. And so, I made up this list of things, and then I made a very concerted effort for every single one of them. I'm like, I'm going to work on these things. I'm going to get past my own fears and insecurities and figure out how to get to a better path for myself. It's funny. I waited till I was 50 to get a tattoo, and the tattoo says, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear." It's a quote from a book, and it's primarily a reminder to myself that I can't let my fears, my insecurities, indecisiveness, and all that get in the way of happiness.
Right.
So, and to be fair, it's something I still work on. It's not like you can just have an epiphany like that and then just your life changes overnight. So when it came to things like the diabetes, I learned everything I could on how to effectively cure type 2 diabetes, and I had a wonderful doctor who helped with that. I started going to the gym, working out, getting in shape, which led to other things, led me back into photography, led me into modeling, and eventually told the husband, the marriage needs to end. And it was kind of funny when that happened. It was 2017, and I was living in West Palm Beach. My husband was living up in Georgia. He came down to visit for a week, and before he came down, I told him, I said, I've got plans this next weekend with friends in Orlando. I've rented a hotel room. I've got friends meeting me. We're going to Disney World. We're going to, I've got this big weekend plan. And his response was essentially, I don't care. I'm coming down. And so I had to, tell my friends. We had to replan the hotel room because the hotel room was in my name. All of this stuff that we had to do. And then the husband came down, and basically for a week, he was just kind of a pain and almost went out of his way. I don't know why, but it kind of made it easier because at the end of the week, I sat him down and I said, I'm not happy in this relationship and I need to end our marriage. It was weird. The only response that he had, he said, I assume you've got another husband lined up already. And I said, no, I don't. And he never, ever, even to this day, has ever asked me why I want a divorce. He never asked. I figured if he wants to know, he would ask eventually, but he never did. So I think deep down, he probably knows why. I won't go into all the details here, but anyway, I'm keeping it amicable, and I don't bear him any ill will. It's just that I didn't want to spend the next 30 years of my life being unhappy. For me, it was interesting. My father's mother was kind of a guide in that regard. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, it would be safe to say he was one of the meanest people I've ever met. He was not a nice person. And that included the way he treated my grandmother. And when my grandmother was in her mid-50s, about my age, she seemed a lot older, but she was only in her mid-50s, she got a divorce. And it was interesting, seeing my father and my aunts and uncles, they certainly understood why my grandmother wanted a divorce, but they were also like, you're a woman in your 50s. You'll never meet another man. You're going to be alone for the rest of your life. Are you sure? And she was like, I would rather be alone than live like this. And so that's what she did. She got a divorce. And the interesting thing was, maybe about a year later, she met the sweetest, kindest man you could ever meet at her church. Just a beautiful man. He was so incredibly kind. He was a good bit older than her. He was already in his 70s. He had prostate cancer. He lasted maybe about 7 more years. And those were the 7 most wonderful years of her life. And, even though they had a short time together, they had a wonderful time together. And so for me, seeing the fact that, my grandmother, a woman in her 50s, could make that decision, have the courage to make that decision, and have the hope of finding someone, I have to have the hope that, a gay man at 53 it's not quite as bad, in all fairness, for me as a 53-year-old man to go finding a new Mr. Right, as it was for my grandmother. So that was part of it for me, learning how to face my fears, and work past that stuff to just try to find happiness again. And I haven't necessarily found it yet, but I'm working there, getting there anyway.
You skipped over the part which I thought was very interesting about being at the bars and introverted and that story.
Yeah, so
a little about that.
Yeah, the introversion was a big thing for me. So, and I think a lot of gay guys are this is gonna resonate with them. I was someone who 7, 8 years ago, I would go out to a gay bar, I would grab a drink, I would stand by the wall in the corner, I would look at other people, I would not work up the courage to talk to anyone. I'd stay at the bar for an hour, being completely alone, feeling isolated, and then I would go home and feel even worse than I had when I went in the first place. And I felt that being an introvert like that was something that was really contributing to my depression. So I started reading up on introversion and what causes it. And are there ways for someone who is an introvert to sort of fake it till you make it as an extrovert? And so that's what I started doing. I would do the same thing. I would go out to the bars and grab a drink and stand there. But I did something different. I would look around the bar, and eventually I would find some other guy doing the same thing I was, standing there with his drink alone, waiting for someone to come up and talk to him. And then I would be the guy that would go up and talk to him and, just start a casual conversation. It didn't always work out. Sometimes it did, though. And I'd be able to start a conversation and make friends with people. And then, maybe we'd be talking and we'd become comfortable with each other. And then I'd see a third guy standing off in the corner drinking a beer all alone. And I'd, tell this guy that I've just started talking to, I'm like, let's go talk to that guy and bring him into the conversation. So I would go out to the bars, and instead of standing there and sort of wallowing in feeling like I can't change anything, I would change things, not just for myself, but for the other two guys or three guys or whatever, how many guys I would make friends with. And I learned how to make friends again. I learned how to work past being an introvert. And the funny thing is now, if you talk to all the friends that I have now and ask them if they knew me as an introvert, a lot of them would say that they can't even imagine me being an introvert anymore.
Right.
I go out, I live in South Florida, so I have a lot of friends in Wilton Manors. I spend a lot of time in Palm Springs, and I've got a lot of friends here. And, the funny thing in Wilton Manors, and it's very similar to Palm Springs, the big thing in the summertime is pool parties. Everybody goes to pool parties. And I go to a lot of pool parties. And a lot of my friends, this is pretty common for gay pool parties. A lot of times they start off with clothing and they become clothing optional. And so in Fort Lauderdale, a lot of my friends, when they throw a pool party, they will, at some point in the party, they will say, "Byron, it's time." And that's because they know I'm the guy who's is like, if the clothes are coming off, I'm going to be the first one doing it. And I'm the life of the party. I'm a little bit weird that way, I guess, which is that a lot of people are very self-conscious being nude. For me, I'm almost the opposite when it comes to being nude. It's that when I take off that last piece of clothing, I have nothing left to hide anymore. I'm being completely honest me, authentic me. And it's kind of freeing in a way. Yeah. My friends, literally, they'll say, "Byron, it's time to get naked." And they want to get naked. And, being comfortable in that way has also led me to do things like work in local theater in Wilton Manors. There's a wonderful local theater company there. I've done 6 different plays for them, 6 different runs of 2 different plays. One is called Truck Stop Sally. It's a comedy, and my character is named Big Dicked Cowboy. It's a subtle name. It refers to the fact that I wear a cowboy hat and a cowboy boots and come out on stage for about 2 minutes. It's a whole lot of funny. Yeah, the other one, it's called Sauna. It takes place in basically a gay men's sauna. And it's actually kind of an interesting story. There's comedic parts to it, but there's also drama. There's a love story that's built into it. And so I played a couple different characters in Sauna as well. But if you had asked me, in 2015, "Byron, are you ever going to get on stage and act? And are you going to act where your entire outfit is a hat and boots?" Never would have.
Oh, wait, that's your outfit?
Yes. My outfit is a
I didn't catch that part.
Cowboy hat and boots.
I thought that was an addition to.
Oh, no, that's the whole outfit. Well, there are socks, but
Right.
between the boots and the hat, there's not much going on there else other than me.
Wow.
My goal is that everyone in Wilton Manors will eventually see me naked, which is why I need to move out to Palm Springs fairly soon, because I'm close to reaching my goal in Wilton Manors. So
Well,
it's time to move out to Palm Springs.
so what got you into acting?
Well, it was funny that the thing with acting was that it was something I'd always wanted to do, even back in high school. I just never had the courage to do it. Learning lines and going out on a stage and knowing single time you go out on stage that you could screw it up. You could be the reason that everyone remembers that was a bad performance. It can be very nerve-wracking, but I learn my lines and do what I have to do to try to always give a good performance, and I enjoy it. To be fair, I would love to do more complicated characters than I've done so far. It is certainly true that if you're an actor who's willing to do a certain amount of nudity, then you get kind of typecast as an actor who will do nudity. And so I would love to do some more complex characters, and I think that'll happen. One of the things I was thinking about when moving out to Palm Springs eventually was that I want to join up with the local theater and do the similar kinds of acting. Although I have to assume that in Palm Springs, even the local community theater is full of people who are like, oh yeah, I've got 5 Emmys.
Oh, no, not at all.
I assume there has to be a bit more of a challenging environment as a community theater actor here than it is.
No, there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah.
Did you know that I'm taking an acting class myself?
No, I didn't.
Did you know that I'm also the new stage manager for the gay theater here?
I had no idea.
Yeah. So, no, I know a little bit about it.
I have an in.
Yeah.
Congrats. I have studied Stanislavski's The Method back in college. Yes, I learned how to be a method actor in college. I was not any good at it. Well, to be fair, it was one of those classes that was a summer class in college, supposed to be easy credits. I think the professor was just kind of phoning it in as far as teaching goes. But, you get what you get in a summer class. It was fun, although we never had like a huge audience, so you never had that feeling of, doing a live performance in front of an audience. So I enjoy that.
I should tell you about, afterward I will, the acting class. You'd probably like that here.
Okay. Yeah. Do you do a lot of like, pretend you're a tree or?
No.
No. Okay. Thank God. Thank God. I'm like,
no.
I mean, the whole method stuff, I mean, some of it seemed quite useful, but I think if we learned it from, Stanislavski himself, maybe we would have learned it a bit better than my local college professor.
Oh. So what's going on now? You're in Florida. You obviously like Palm Springs.
Yes. It's fair to say my heart is here. So I live in Miami, essentially. About a year ago, I had visited my father and realized that he had reached a point where he needed someone to sort of live with him and just to be there in case, things happen. My stepmother had already moved into a dementia care facility, so my father was living alone. And, we talked to my stepmother or to my stepsister, and we had really just realized that he really couldn't live alone anymore. So I moved in with him. I'm doing my best to look after him, and she lives about a mile away, so she helps out a lot with that too, quite frankly. But it's just, it's a bit of a challenge. Obviously, the history that I told you at the beginning as far as coming out and how I was outed to family and things. My father and I didn't really talk much for almost 20 years, and our relationship has kind of gotten back on the right track, but it's not the relationship that it was when I was a kid. As a result, it never will be. I'm doing my best, and but quite frankly, it's not easy. I would like to kind of be able to live my own life the way I want to live it, and moving out here to Palm Springs would really just make me so much happier than I am right now. So I'm doing my best. I'm the eldest son. I'm living up to my responsibilities, but it's not always easy to do.
Well, I hope you get to move here soon.
So do I. Luckily I get to travel with my work, and my sister looks after my dad when I'm out. And so, I came out here. I actually came out here for a week for Memorial Day, and then apparently there was a little flu going around Palm Springs, and I got it like the night before I was supposed to fly home. So I ended up staying another week, just because I didn't want to come back to my dad with a flu bug. I'm fine now, so I got to spend a couple more nice, fun days in Palm Springs, which is nice. And I've actually already planned my next flight out here. I'm coming out July 27th, I think. See friends, hang out, and I truly love it here.
How long will you stay this time? next time?
The plan is just for a week, unless I get, COVID or who knows what on this next trip. Hopefully, hopefully it'll just be a fairly short trip this time, and then I won't be back again until the fall. I've got other trips planned in August, and then I'm spending all of September traveling around Europe, and so it'll probably be like October, November before I make it back out here.
Pride weekend, first weekend in November.
Ah, okay. Well, that's when
Or the last one in the United States.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, because October is Atlanta Pride. So I'll be doing Atlanta Pride, and then I'll have to start planning my trip out here for November for that. And then there's a couple big events in Fort Lauderdale in late November, early December that I'll do. And then, I don't know, I just have to see. I'll move out here when I can, but at this point, it's kind of up in the air.
Good stuff.
Oh, thank you very much.
You've already answered some of what I'm going to ask you right now, but before we end, I always say, what have you learned in your life that you could pass on to my peeps? And you've already said some stuff, but...
Well, so the most important thing is, what my tattoo says, everything you want is on the other side of fear. We all have our insecurities. We all have our sort of mental scars that we carry with us through life, but you can't let those things define you. You can't let them hold you back. One of the things that I learned quite recently in counseling and therapy was that I have the power to heal myself, whether it is antidepressant medication or therapy or anything. These are all great tools that I can use to help myself. But at the core of it, when it comes to treating my depression and anxiety and all those things, it's really about me and realizing that I had the power to make the changes. And I started back in 2015, and it's still a journey, but still, learning that, especially when it comes to depression, that I have the ability to sort of set my own goals and just to change the course of my life in that regard. And it's been a powerful epiphany to have.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming in. I don't usually do one this late in the day, but I'm really glad you did, and I'm glad we worked it out.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And we'll do another one when you come back.
Absolutely. I'll look forward to it.
Thanks, Byron.
Thank you.